Okay. So here we'll be creating a trusted book provider for CETA Press. And we'll be basically following the template of the previous pull request, which is this one, and Max pulled out all the files in this Google Doc. We'll be adding a subclass for our abstract book provider for OpenStack for CETA Press. And then we'll basically be registering it in this array so it gets picked up. Then when we do our searches, we'll be fetching the identifier for CETA Press in all our search requests. These files have moved around a bit, but it should be pretty similar. Then we'll be rendering the download options for CETA Press because each provider has its own download options, and the links constructed for each download path are constructed here. And then the read button is rendered here with the CETA Press ID, and this is where the URL is constructed and the message for like what this thing is.
Can I take a quick step back just to augment for anyone who's watching? So traditionally on the Open Library website, the Open Library is a catalog of books, and some of those books have read options. So you could see a button that says read or borrow. Most of the time in the past, those read buttons or borrow buttons were powered by archive.org books. So when you click read, it would connect you to archive.org and then initiate a borrow or bring you to the book. And a few years ago, we added support for something else into the Open Library website called Trusted Book Providers. And Trusted Book Providers is a way to import book records and book metadata from other sources like Project Gutenberg, OpenStax, Wikisource, what's the Simply, there's a Standard eBooks, etc. And what happens is each time we want to add a new trusted book provider, we need to basically implement that provider. And implementing the provider, as Drini was just saying, involves three things. One is the identifiers, basically all of that, like the data mapping and the identifiers that are unique for each trusted book provider. So like identifier : OpenStax or identifier : Standard eBooks. The second thing that's required is a way to make sure that the trusted book provider that we're adding to the system is included along with the other identifiers within search. So when we're returning search results and we have to decide whether to show a read button, we want to make sure that this new identifier, this new trusted book provider identifier that we just registered, also gets included in that query. And then finally, we want to make sure that when you click the button itself, that each provider defines its own functionality for like how to take the trusted book provider's identifier, like OpenStax, and then turn that into like a URL pattern. So the read button actually takes you to the correct link composed or based on that identifier. Did I say anything incorrectly, by the way, Drini? I may have.
I think that all sounded correct. Yeah.
Okay. And here what we're looking at is recently a trusted book provider was added for OpenStax. And the way that we did that, I think, was, I'm a little fuzzy on it, but maybe we used their API, and the result of their API gave us a JSON document. And then we took that JSON document from their API and we wrote a little adapter. I don't think that the adapter is in this PR.
Exactly. That's one of the pieces that's kind of not, oops, looks like I have my sharing class. That's one of the pieces that's not shown through this pull request is the actual importing. So this will kind of do all the wiring, and this kind of assumes records already exist inside our database for OpenStax, for example.
Okay, so step one would be just like any book record in Open Library, we would need to take a data source, which might have their own field names and their own values, and we would need to write a translator, maybe that's a good word for it, to take, for instance, the OpenStax API data and to marshal that or convert it into open library book records that can be imported into the catalog. And importantly, when we do that marshaling, we want to make sure that every record that we prepare to import into Open Library has an identifier field for the corresponding trusted book provider that we're adding. So I think Drini right now is about to show us a way to find all things that have been imported from OpenStax. And if we click one of them and then we change the URL so that we can view it as JSON, then we can see one of the fields here is that identifiers is a list or a dictionary.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a dictionary, and when this was imported, identifiers was given a key of OpenStax and a value of American Government 3E. And American Government 3E presumably can be used along with the OpenStax template to basically make it so that when you click the borrow button, it goes to the right. Or the read button in this case. It's an open access document. It'll go to the right place.
Exactly. And if we look at the read button HTML template, we see that it takes the OpenStax ID as a parameter, and it just outputs this /ID. So if we want to build it ourselves, we can go here, grab American Government, and drop it in, and there we go. This is the book that record corresponds to.
Brilliant. So I think for today, with the time we have remaining, maybe what we should try to do is write a small importer for CETA Press, who is a partner that's expressed interest in having their books imported into Open Library. And when we do this, we'll make sure that each book record that we import into Open Library also has an identifier of CETA, CITA, and that'll be the import step. And then secondly, and we might not get through all of the importing right now, but we'll try to come up with like a proof of concept script that you can refer to. And then the second half will be creating a new or implementing a new abstract class for CETA Press, similar to what we've done for standard ebooks and OpenStax, which instructs Open Library on how to use the IDs for CETA that have been imported in the system. And then finally, we'll create a template and then add the ID type of CETA Press to our Solr queries. And so hopefully it'll be relatively straightforward. So maybe the next thing we want to do is look back at the CETA Press issue, which gives us a background on how the data is stored. And I think that there's only a few books here.
Yeah, so creating the importer will be a bit fuzzier because there are often a lot of questions that come up with creating the importers. So what we might want to do instead is we'll import one record, or we could kind of dummy import it, and then we'll go through the code and make the changes to make the read button appear for that record.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so then for this, let me start up my Docker here as well, so that that's running in the background. Yeah, let's take a look at an example record here from CETA Press.
Something oh, interesting. Something we may want to consider is that people who are working on trusted book providers will likely have lots of questions about how they get the data into Open Library. And that's going to present some challenges.
Yeah, we should 100% have a video on that. But I'm not sure I have everything ready to do that right now.
Yep, fair enough.
Yeah. If you do want something close, so a contributor has been working on something sort of in this vein for importing, I forget what it was. For Open Textbook Library, which is sort of a trusted book provider. So this kind of goes through the rough flow and uses has some files that can be used as reference for how to copy everything through. And yeah, it's the same thing, a translator or a mapper that takes the data from the source data set and converts it into an import record that matches a certain schema that we can then import.
And we might also want to, if you can use your mouse and click around for me, in the GitHub for Open Library within the scripts directory, there's a directory specifically for trusted book providers.
We should probably move this there at some point.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. And also, it would be nice if people who are watching this video would proactively use the providers directory as a home for their import script. So here, for instance, we have another script here that can be used for importing data from a source. And then I think there might be one for, yeah, there we go. Standard ebooks should be moved in there as well. Can we take a quick peek at Pressbooks or standard ebooks, either one?
Standard ebooks is, I think, a little better. And it's pretty similar. So here it has fetches all the data. Then again, it maps the data into an import record, which is the format that Open Library supports for importing. And then it pulls that in. The part that is a bit complicated, so these importers haven't really been standardized. So they each kind of do their own sort of separate thing. That's something we need to fix on our end from the design architecture, the code architecture. Then here, this stuff's a bit complicated because these batch things, I'm not entirely sure if you can run these locally. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott.
You can. I need to write directions, but you can now. It's possible.
Okay, but it's not as simple as running the script. You have to set up some other things as well.
You may have to make sure the database tables exist, but once that's done, you can run the script.
Okay, so this might have a few more things to hammer out. So the way I usually test these is I just trigger and import manually. But yeah, these are a good template, but we need to kind of dry these up because they're very duplicated across these three things.
But in summary, the thing that script is doing is making a networked API call to standard ebooks, which has a JSON feed of the data. And then it pulls all of the books back, which is a list of books. And then it iterates over each book in the list. And it converts it from the schema that the trusted book provider uses, such as like book title. And it maps it to a schema that Open Library defines. And I think that can we really quickly go to that file? I think it might even be referenced. It's within it's in Open Library bots GitHub.
Open Library client, yeah.
You're right, Open Library client. So this file describes the schema on our side that the trusted book provider fields need to be mapped into. And so, for instance, if standard ebooks calls their book title, then here what it's saying is Open Library calls that field title. So we would need to basically change the standard ebooks dictionary into the one that we use. And so that's approximately what we would do for CETA Press as well.
Exactly. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's jump into code here. So I created a new branch for feature CETA Press. There we go. And then let's jump back here for a sec and look at what this data looks at. So one of the things is all our trusted book providers need an identifier. So we do need to make sure that that exists. Some books just don't have one. Some websites don't have one, and it's kind of something we can't super handle right now. So this seems like the closest thing to an identifier. So this is probably what we'll use as the identifier. And I assume if we try to go to this URL, this should bring up the book.
And what we're currently looking at is one example book of CETA Press, the JSON for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There we go. Cool. So great. So it does seem like we can use this to construct URLs. I usually also do another hunt around because sometimes they have a numeric identifier somewhere, which they don't display, but which they use for various things. But looking at these URLs here in the lower left, it looks like they use that slug pretty consistently, except for the PDF. So as you can see here, the PDF has kind of like a random specific string. That just generally means we won't be able to have a link to the PDF directly, but that's okay. Okay, great. So then let's go back to our pull request and start adding in the pieces here. To the OpenStax pull request we're using as a template. Okay, so we're going to start in book providers pie. And then we're going to, let's find the OpenStax one. And we're just going to copy this basically and add the next one. So this was CETA Press provider. For identifiers, because of the legacy sort of thing, we have short name and identifier key. We generally want to keep these the same. So in this case, I'm going to use CETA Press. Try to use something that's basically how the website represents itself. So if I go here, so here actually they just use CETA, even though their name is CETA Press. So let's go with CETA Press. Okay. Grade is own OCA ID. I forget what this one is, but if you're over here, whether the OCA ID is an archive of content from this provider. This is useful only for certain things which always are also archived on the Internet Archive, as well as being their own book provider. In this case, I believe returning false is what we want to do. I can't remember, but let's just leave it at that. Okay, and then next chunk, we need to add it to our list here. The ordering here isn't super important. The only thing that matters is that Internet Archive is at the end. Okay, CETA Press. Word search code. So this file has largely disappeared, I believe. It's all been moved out. But if we search for this string, which is pretty unique in the code base.
And quickly before we move to search, so what we've done before is we've created a new, we implemented the abstract class for trusted book providers. So now we have a class for CETA Press, and then we've added that to our list of trusted book providers. So we've basically registered the trusted book provider.
Exactly. So in order to find where this code has moved, I'm just going to take this string, which is relatively unique looking, and search for it in the code base. Here's one instance of it. So we can now add ID CETA Press. And it looks like it also appears in the tests. I assume we'll also need this here. CETA Press. And if we go here, same thing. Press. Okay, so that's CETA Press sorted.
And what were those files that we changed, just so folks who are doing this know?
Let's see. So it seems like the work search scheme. So that's in plugins / work search / schemes / works.py. The tests for that file, I believe, or for a different file for test / test work search, and then the code for work search plugins work search code.py.
Great.
Those are the 3 files. Okay. And so that's should be all the references here. I don't think we missed anyone. And I will start creating these files. So I'm just going to open the OpenStax download options. Stacks download options. And so if we could, so the different download options change on a provider basis. Some of them are super consistent and they'll have the same different kinds of file types. Some of them are not super consistent and we can't really know what formats will be available. So let's just take a look through CETA Press to see what case it falls under. To see if it has, so let's search, for example, PDF. And see if it,
And we might want to just do a minimal case because I think we're going to time out in a minute and a half.
okay, let's see. Yeah, so yes, okay, we can do a minimal case for this one. So I'll just copy this, or I'll copy the whole file. And then rename it to look like the other ones instead of OpenStax. It will be CETA Press. It's important these file names match to the identifiers because obviously it's doing stitching of names later. Okay, so we have CetaPress download options, and so this will now, instead of taking the OpenStax ID, it'll take the CetaPress ID. And let's see what the prefix was here. This. So it'll be this plus the CetaPress ID for download options, and yeah, so we'll just do more at CetaPress. Download PDF from CetaPress. And here actually was kind of similar for OpenStax. You can see it's the same URL, but we know a PDF file is always going to be supplied for OpenStax anyways, we knew that. But we didn't know the direct link. So we just linked to the page, to the main landing page. Yeah, we have less than a minute. I don't know if I can speed run this.
No, that's
But-
okay. Why don't we can stop here, and then if we want to record it just a few more minutes, we can stitch these two videos together.
Yeah, sounds good.
Right, see you in just a minute. We might.
Okay. All right, so we just finished implementing the template for the download options. So just as a reference for OpenStax, this is where this appears, just underneath the read button. And now we'll create the read button for CetaPress. So I'll just go here and copy the OpenStax read button, Control-C, Control-V, and then go here and rename it to CetaPress. And then
And just as we're doing this, just as a reminder, not all trusted book providers will have download options, but all trusted book providers will have a some sort of read button that shows up. The read button is the clickable blue button, and the download options is an optional list on the books page. So you'll have at minimum one template that needs to be implemented for every trusted book provider for the read button, and then at most two templates, the second template being the download options. And we just implemented them kind of in the reverse order of the download options first. And I think there might have even been more download options potentially, but just for illustration, we're doing a minimal example. And now we're on, like Jamie said, we're on the read button.
Exactly. So I'll just go through here. And so here there are going to be a few references to change. So the main link, we have it from our option URL here. So it's going to be CetaPress / oh, this is the ID. Oops. CetaPress ID. And then instead of read ebook from CetaPress. And usually I would also, let me do that quickly, because I want to check how they reference themselves, whether they have a space between the P or whether they reference themselves in all lowercase or something. But they haven't written their names anywhere. Okay, so it seems like all lowercase, and they never write CetaPress anywhere.
Oh, there it is. It's CetaPress.
Great. Okay, so then that's what we'll use. CetaPress. Makes sense. CetaPress, and then here CetaPress, or I guess this is a CSS class, so we'll just do that. And then this needs to match the thing below for the toast message. So this toast message is CetaPress. What do I call it? Toast. Yeah. This toast message is what appears. So, for example, on OpenStax, if I hit read, it'll take you to OpenStax, and because the user might be kind of surprised that they've been sent to a new page, if they hit back, this displays kind of what happened in case the user was confused. So it describes what OpenStax is, that they're a trusted book provider. We sort of tries to have good, safe content, and with a learn more link that takes them to the OpenStax of that page. So we're going to need to implement the same thing for CetaPress. So I'm not going to do the research into exactly what CetaPress is because I don't know that much about it, but I will get the links here. So instead of OpenStax.about the CetaPress, this book is available from cetapress.org. CetaPress, and then I'll just mark this as a big to-do. Okay. Learn more. Okay, that's everything implemented there. Save. Okay, so I think that's all the pieces. So now we should be able to bring up our Docker environment and start and create a book with the CedarPress ID. See here. Velocity 80. And the way I'm going to just test this is I'm just going to take one of the existing books in the testing environment and give it an identifier that CedarPress understands, because that'll just be the fastest way to do it. There we go. It's up and running. So if I just search for anything here. But I think it's still starting something up there. So I'm just going to go directly to a book here.
Could also go to the homepage and click one of the.
Yeah, let me just check. I think the carousel there, or if it's a Solr issue. I've been doing a lot of stuff with Solr, so I think I might have a weird thing with my Solr right now. Oh, there we go. It's great. So if I search for anything, search for the word the. Great, and then get a book. Oh, something else we'll have to do, because CedarPress doesn't exist as an identifier yet. In order to be able to use the edit UI to add it as an identifier, we have to, this is something that an administrator will be able to do. What is this, a config/addition? It needs to be added to the list of allowed identifiers on this page. So if I hit edit this via YAML, go down to the identifiers section. For now, I'll just add it to the top, but usually you would keep it in alphabetical order. I would just keep it in alphabetical order. Around here under book mooch. Okay. Go to label CETA, and this has to match all the other things we wrote. Name, what the name is. What's the difference between label and name? Oh, label is human readable. Whoops, the backwards. I can see the press. Press. And then the URL is going to be the same thing that we had in the other spots. I think it was just CedarPress / the thing. So let's do it. I think it was on top of, there we go.
CedarPress.org.
Yeah, / the thing. And then we use the triple @ symbol here to denote the placeholder. That's need and CedarPress. So you will be able to do this locally if you've logged in, and you can add the identifier here to do your testing. Once you've added it, you will need to restart the web container. So give that a restart. And then it'll appear in the drop down when we go in to edit the book. So let me give this a refresh. And if we go to identifiers, let's see if it appeared. Book mooch, oh, not yet. Let me give another refresh. CedarPress. Great. And so then we'll give this book, and because it's going to get a bit confused with Internet Archive also being there, so I'm going to remove Internet Archive, although it shouldn't actually, just so, but anyways. So I'll add that slug from the actual data record. And so if everything's been wired up correctly, what do we expect to see?
Download options and a read button on the book page for Mark Twain that links to CedarPress, because we've taken an existing record on openlibrary.org. Sorry, an existing record on Drini's local environment on his local computer. He has the branch on his local computer with all of the changes that we made, and we've updated the config on the dev instance of the website to register the ID. There are 3 pieces, just to recap. The 3 pieces being that we are on the branch with our code changes. We have a book that is already imported into the system that we have added an identifier to through the edit interface. And we've updated the local instances configuration through Infogami to include the ID type. With those three things in place, it's been imported. We're on a branch with the code, and we've updated the Infogami edition types, or identifier types. We should see going to that record on the local environment shows a read button that goes to CETA Press and download options.
And moment of truth. Let's see what error we get. Hey, works on the first try. Come on. Okay, and then
Here we
let's
go.
go here. Takes us to this book. And we also have the download options here. And even if so it'll take, I think, like 60 seconds for Solr to catch up. Let me just give it a kick so it catches up immediately. And now if I search for
That was a handy trick. I don't know that I knew that one.
Let's see if it works. Oh, there we go. It doesn't. Let me see what this is even linking to right now. Oh, I think this might be because there's an Internet Archive ID or something with it, and it's choosing that one for some reason, or it hasn't caught up yet, and what I did didn't have an impact. So let me try ID. No, okay, so whatever I did didn't work anyway, so that's why it's not so handy. But yeah, that's the rough thing there of getting everything in.
Though hypothetically, if we waited enough time, then the read button should also work correctly in the search results.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure why it's not exactly right now, but oh, it's because my Solr updater is dead because I'm doing random things right now. But yeah.
Great, that's good to know. Well, that is a complete guide. The only thing that has not been answered, which will definitely be something that people care about, is implementing the importer for the data of a trusted book provider so that the book records can be imported into Open Library with the right identifiers that can be used by this whole system. And even writing the import script is only half the battle. You'll still need to basically create S3 keys. Well, now we're getting off the rails, but you'll need to talk to staff to help you run your importer script so that even with the data and even with the mapping, they can help you get all of those records and actually import them into Open Library. It should work locally. And if it doesn't work locally yet, or if you had a problem when you're trying to do batching, then talk to either, I'm going to say, Scott or Jim Champ, and they can work with you to make sure you're able to at least get it running locally. And then as a next step, you can give us the script, create a pull request, and then we can run it in production and then get all of the records imported. And then in production, staff will need to run config edition dot YAML, this page right here, config edition.yaml (m=edit), because production will also need that ID type registered in the list.
And on production, we will have to restart the web containers after editing this.
Great. Trini, thank you for leading us today. And Scott, thanks for recording.